The soft glow of candlelight danced across the white tablecloths at Romano's, the kind of restaurant where conversations happened in hushed tones and wine glasses caught the warm amber light. Claire Mitchell sat alone at table 7, her blonde hair falling gently over her shoulders as she stared at her phone, waiting. She was 28, working 2 jobs to make ends meet since her mother's medical bills had drained what little savings they'd had. Tonight was supposed to be different. Her friend Sarah had insisted she needed to get out to meet someone new. "Just one blind date," Sarah had pleaded. "What's the worst that could happen?" Claire glanced at her small purse, knowing exactly what was inside. $5.37, enough for a cup of coffee, maybe an appetizer if she was careful. She'd chosen this cream-colored sweater because it looked elegant but cost nothing, a gift from her mother years ago when times were better. At the table behind her, David Harrison watched quietly. He was 42, a father of 2 teenage daughters, and the CEO of a small but successful consulting firm. His dark hair was touched with silver at the temples, and his kind eyes had learned to notice things others might miss. Tonight he was supposed to be discussing a business partnership, but his colleague was running late. David had seen Claire arrive 20 minutes ago, watched her check her phone repeatedly, saw the way she carefully studied the menu, and then set it aside with a small sigh. He recognized something in her posture, a quiet dignity mixed with worry. It reminded him of his own mother, years ago, stretching every dollar to make sure he and his sister never felt poor. "Excuse me," Claire said softly to the waiter who approached. "Could I just have a coffee for now? I'm waiting for someone." The waiter, a young man who'd seen many first dates come and go, nodded kindly. "Of course, miss. The house blend?" Claire nodded, not mentioning that it was the least expensive item on the beverage menu. David found himself reaching for his phone. He'd built his business on reading people, on understanding unspoken needs. There was something about this young woman. The careful way she smoothed her napkin, the gentle manner with which she spoke to the staff, that spoke of good character facing difficult circumstances. He typed a quick message and showed it to his waiter, Marcus, who had served him many times over the years. 5 minutes later, Marcus approached Claire's table with a warm smile. "Miss, the gentleman at table 12 has taken care of your meal this evening. He asked me to tell you that kindness should always be passed forward and that he hopes you have a wonderful evening." Claire looked confused, then turned to glance around the restaurant. David had deliberately positioned himself where she couldn't see him clearly, but he watched as her eyes filled with tears, not of embarrassment, but of gratitude. I don't understand," she whispered to Marcus. "Who would do such a thing?" "Someone who believes in the goodness of people," Marcus replied gently. "He asked that you simply enjoy your evening and remember that there are still kind souls in this world." Just then, Claire's phone buzzed. Her blind date finally texting, "Sorry, can't make it." Something came up. "Rain check?" Claire stared at the message, and David saw her shoulders tremble slightly. Here she was, alone in an expensive restaurant, the recipient of a stranger's kindness, with nowhere else to be and no one waiting for her. David made a decision that surprised even himself. He stood up, straightened his jacket, and walked slowly to her table. "Excuse me," he said gently. "I hope you'll forgive the intrusion, but you seem to be dining alone, and so am I. My business colleague canceled at the last minute. Would you care to join me? I promise I'm harmless, just a tired father of 2 teenagers who could use some pleasant conversation." Claire looked up at him, taking in his genuine smile, the laugh lines around his eyes, the way he held himself with quiet confidence but no arrogance. "You're the one who," she began, "who believes that sometimes the universe puts us exactly where we need to be." David finished with a gentle smile. "I'm David Harrison." "And you are?" "Claire," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Claire Mitchell." "And I don't know what to say." "Say you'll join me for dinner," David replied. "No expectations, no obligations. Just 2 people sharing a meal and maybe some conversation about life." As Claire gathered her small purse and moved to David's table, She felt something shift inside her, a reminder that kindness still existed in unexpected places, that dignity could be preserved even in vulnerable moments. Over the course of the next 2 hours, they talked about everything and nothing. David learned about Claire's work at the veterinary clinic, her love of old movies, her devotion to her mother. Claire discovered that David was a widower who'd raised his daughters mostly alone, that he volunteered at the local literacy center, that he believed success meant nothing if you couldn't share it with others. "You know," David said as the evening wound down, "my company is looking for someone to manage our client relations. Someone with a gentle touch who understands that business is really about people. Would you be interested in hearing more about it?" Claire's eyes widened. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," David said quietly. "I know you treat service staff with kindness. I know you have grace under pressure. I know you care for your mother and work hard to make ends meet. That tells me everything about your character." As they said goodbye outside the restaurant, David handed Claire a business card. "Think about it. And Claire, tonight wasn't charity. It was simply one human being recognizing another's worth." 6 months later, Claire would become David's head of client relations. A year after that, she would become much more. But on this night, under the soft glow of the restaurant's lights, it was simply a moment of kindness between strangers, a reminder that sometimes, when we least expect it, grace finds us, and sometimes the most beautiful love stories begin not with grand gestures, but with simple acts of human decency, offered freely from one heart to another. David drove home that night, thinking of his daughters, hoping they would grow up in a world where kindness still mattered, where people looked out for one another. Claire walked to her car with a lightness in her step she hadn't felt in months, carrying with her not just the memory of a lovely evening, but the knowledge that good people still existed in this world. Sometimes, the most profound changes in our lives begin with the smallest acts of grace.